Let the sea resound and everything in it.
The world and all who lived in it.
Let the rivers clap their hands.
Let the mountains sing together for joy.
Let them sing before the Lord.
For he comes to judge the earth.
He will judge the world in righteousness
And the peoples with equity.
Merry Christmas. This is awesome. This is an awesome time of the year, and there's just awesomeness everywhere. And I like saying awesome, and I like the idea of awesomeness, but what is awesome, really? I want to suggest that awesome and to be in awe is a catalyst for true joy. If you want to know what true joy is, it is incentivized, it is a byproduct of being in awe. Now, joy has a lot of different catalysts. I mean, gratitude. Gratitude is a great catalyst for joy. When we are thankful, when we appreciate the things around us, when we take the time to notice the goodness, that can incentivize, that can be a catalyst for joy. Generosity is a catalyst for joy. When we get out of our own heads, when we get out of our own way and we think about and we invest in the lives of others, when we serve others, that's a catalyst for joy. Friendship and family and worshiping together, the fellowship of like-minded people, the sense of community, those are catalysts for joy. But I want to suggest today that the greatest catalyst for joy, if we really want to know what true joy is, it is incentivized and it is a byproduct of being in awe. But what does that mean? What does it take? Today I want to share with you something that I learned over 20 years ago. It's a simple statement that changed my life. It was told to me by one of my very best friends, a coworker, a fellow pastor, when I was serving in a church in San Francisco, California, and he became one of my very best friends. And he was one of those people who was an outside-the-box thinker. He was incredibly intelligent and almost unlimited in his creativity. And he was a brilliant pastor and a brilliant creative. And one summer, in the summer of 2002, he decided that he was going to take his family on a summer vacation. And he did what many of us did. We practiced automotive incarceration with our children. And he decided that they were going to drive his oldest son, who was starting college in Chicago, across the country from San Francisco on a road trip with his family. The problem is he had 4 young boys. And so they made the trip from San Francisco to Chicago. They stopped at the Badlands and at Mount Rushmore. They even went to the Corn Palace. And they dropped their oldest son off in Chicago. And then on the way back, they came down south so that they could visit the Grand Canyon. And when they got back to San Francisco, I asked him, I said, how was the trip? And he was classically understated and basically said, well, we survived. And I said, but how was the Grand Canyon? I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I always wanted to go. And I was looking for his inspirational, his creative eye to tell me something unique about the Grand Canyon. He said, it's a big hole in the ground, made by the finger of God. And then he said, but I realized something important as I was standing there on the rim of the Grand Canyon. And what he told me he realized 20 years ago, standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon, has changed my life ever since. Because what he told me was the source code for awe. It is how we place ourselves in a position to be in awe. One simple thing. But before I tell you what that one simple thing is, I'd like to pray. Would you pray with me? Father in heaven, I would ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight, and that you would use your word spoken by your servant and anointed by your Spirit to drag us, even kicking and screaming, into joy. May we truly be in awe today, and may joy be the byproduct of this awesome season. Pray that for myself, for my family, and for everyone who has the opportunity to hear this message today. For we ask this together in Jesus' name. Amen. Psalm 98 is, we are labeling the Psalm of Joy. And it's the last stanza, verses 7, 8, and 9, that bring the joyful invitation to its climax. Psalm 98, verse 7 says, "Let the seas resound and everything in them, the world and all who live in it. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. Let them sing before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the people with equity." It's this stanza, the final stanza of the 98th Psalm, that really informed Isaac Watts as he wrote a hymnal from the collective works of the book of Psalms. It was in the year 1719 that Isaac Watts published his psalm-based hymnal. And the psalm that was based on Psalm 98 really focuses on this last stanza. It was 130 years later that a British composer named Lowell Mason, took the words of Isaac Watts' hymn from Psalm 98 and set it to the music of George Frederick Handel. And it became what is, to this day, the most popular, the most widely selling Christmas hymn in the English language. You know it as Joy to the World. It comes directly from Psalm 98. The first verse of Joy to the World says, "Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing." Let heaven and nature sing. Let heaven and nature sing. He was born in 1902 in San Francisco, California. And his earliest memory is of the Great San Francisco earthquake in 1906. In fact, it was during an aftershock of that great earthquake that he fell and broke his nose and suffered from a deviated septum and was unable to breathe through his nose for the rest of his life. He grew up wanting more than anything to be a concert pianist. He devoted his young life to practicing and learning and developing his skill in playing the performance piano. But as a young man, as a teenager, his family took a trip to Yosemite National Forest Yosemite National Park in Central California. And for that trip, his father bought him what was then a state-of-the-art Kodak Brownie film camera. He immediately fell in love with the idea of photography and began developing his skills over the rest of his life until he died in 1984. Ansel Adams became the most renowned nature photographer in the world. He received honorary doctorates from a half a dozen degrees. He received awards from the National Audubon Society, the Sierra Club, the National Geographic Society. He published countless books. I have two beautiful books in my library of Ansel Adams photographs of Yosemite and a retrospective of the national parks. And these are magnificent books filled with beautiful photographs, and all of them are in black and white. You see, Ansel Adams perfected what was called the art of zone imaging, where he would calculate from the frame of the shot that he was taking the darkest and the lightest parts and expose the film in just the right way so that as the film was processed and as the print was made, it would be extraordinarily detailed, and the contrast between light and dark would make what was a black and white image almost filled with life and color. His photos were so famous that in 2007, a print that is called The Winter Clearing in Yosemite was sold at auction for $722,500 for one print. And just recently, in December of 2020, at a Sotheby's auction, this photograph, the photograph of the Snake River and the Teton Mountains, sold at auction, are you ready for this? For $988,000. I am willing to give you this print. Should you write a check to Riverbend Church, you take this home today. We'll make sure you can. This obviously is not that original print. It's a copy of that original print. And without a doubt, Ansel Adams was in awe of the natural world around him. He devoted his entire artistic career to capturing the beauty and the majesty of the images of the natural world that he lived in. You see, this was his spirituality. His spirituality was tied to nature. As far as I can tell from the biographies I've read of Ansel Adams, he was not really an overtly spiritual person. There are some authors who believe that he was genuinely an agnostic. I think he was actually a worshiper of nature. He was more of a pantheist than he was an agnostic. There's one quote where it says, "I believe in beauty." He says, "I believe in beauty and rocks and soil and water and air." He believes in the power of nature. He believes in the majesty and the mystery of the world around him. He's not alone. The psalmist believes in that too. The psalmist, the one who wrote Psalm 98, believes very much in the majesty and the mystery and the beauty and the wonder of the world that he lives in. But the psalmist does not worship the world. The psalmist worships the one who made the world. The psalmist doesn't worship the production. The psalmist worships the producer. The psalmist sees the elegance in the design and worships the designer. The psalmist doesn't worship the creation. The psalmist worships the creator. Perhaps you never thought about it, but we do this all the time. Imagine that you go to a really fine restaurant and you're sitting down for a meal and the service is meticulous. The environment is perfect. It's a beautiful place. And the service is attentive and careful, and the food is magnificent. The food is absolutely breathtaking. It's delicious. You've never tasted anything like it. I can't imagine that anyone would sit there and look at the plate after they had eaten the food and go, "Thank you, food. You were wonderful. I'm glad that you existed for me." No, anyone with any sense would say, "Thank you to the servers, thank you to the managers. Go back in the kitchen and thank the cook, the one who made it." It's pointless to worship the product when you can worship the producer. It's pointless to worship the design when you can worship the designer. And this is what the psalmist does in verses 7 and 8. The psalmist is celebrating the beauty and the majesty of the world, the natural world. Let the seas resound and everything in it. Let the world and all who live in it. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. Let them sing before the Lord. But you see, the psalmist knew that this was a means to an end, not an end in itself. Because all of the praise, all of the adoration, all of the worship, all of the awe belonged to God. And you see that in verse 9, where it says something that's difficult to understand. You have these two verses that reflect on the majesty and the mystery of the universe. And then in verse 9 it says, let them sing before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the people with equity. I don't know about you, but equity has become a trigger word for me. It was 4 or 5 years ago, and I forget, I was reading an article, a paper that was published in one of the Ivy League schools or something about the quest for equality. And the author began substituting the word equity for equality, and I was like, whoa, stop. No, that's not correct. Equality and equity are not the same thing. They are dramatically different concepts. Equity is very different than equality. I'm a child of the 60s. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I was raised on the civil rights movement. I understand that women's rights and racial equality is worth fighting for. I believe in that. I believe that it is on me, it is on us to treat people with equal honor, with equal respect, with equal compassion. That's our decision. That's what equality is. It's on us. Equity is a very different thing. And what has happened in our culture, and I've made this observation, and it really upsets me, that we are not more careful with our words. We have sort of this semantic subjectivism, where words mean what we want them to mean. And I understand this is a byproduct of postmodern thinking. It's out of the Enlightenment, where the ideas of absolutes were called into question, where truth is no longer an absolute, where your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. And I shouldn't be surprised that it affects our vocabulary. I mean, every generation comes up with words. I mean, hip and cool in my parents' generation were anatomical and meteorological. In my generation, hip and cool had to do with your attitude, had nothing to do with the weather or your bone structure. And words today, every generation creates their own vocabulary, but there's certain concepts that we have to agree on to function as a society. I know what you're thinking. Okay, Dave, whoa, settle down, calm down, fella. We don't want to get political at Riverbend. But I'm telling you, this isn't political, it's theological. It's not a political issue, it's a theological issue. And when you get theological, you're on my turf. And when you're on my turf, I can tell you that equity is an idea. And if you look it up in what's called a dictionary, you will find that a dictionary defines equity as what is beyond common law. It is something that a third party adjudicates to make restoration or reparations. It is not on us to accomplish equity. It's on someone more powerful than us to accomplish equity. And for the Hebrew person, that was captured in one word, the Hebrew word meshar. The Hebrew word mashar, as it occurs in the Hebrew Bible, it means to make level, or to make smooth, or to remove the unevenness of something. And it wasn't just a landscaping term, it was a metaphor for restoration, for renewal, for reconstruction. It was the idea of making things whole and right. And this was attributed, the author in the Hebrew Bible who uses the word meshar more than any other is the prophet Isaiah. And the prophet Isaiah uses the word meshar to refer to what the Messiah will do. In Isaiah chapter 26, he says, the path of the righteous is meshar, and you, the upright one, the Messiah, make the way of the righteous meshar, smooth. Isaiah 42:16, I will lead the blind by ways they have not known. Along unfamiliar paths I will guide them. I will turn the darkness into light before them and make the rough places meshar. I will do this. This is the promise of the Messiah. And one of the most blatantly messianic passages, other than Isaiah 53, is Isaiah 40. And in Isaiah 40, verse 4, it says, every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low, and the rough place shall become Meshar, and the rugged places a plain. What Isaiah is saying is that it's a prerogative, and it is the obligation, and it's the promise of the Messiah that I will make everything equitable. I accomplish equity, not you. The psalmist agrees, and every time the word Meshar appears in the Psalms, it's an attribute of God alone. God's people are never encouraged to seek Meshar. It is God's prerogative. In Psalm 9, it says, He, meaning God, rules the world in righteousness and judges the people with Meshar, equity. Psalm 67, may the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you, God, rule the peoples with equity and guide the nations of the earth. Psalm 75, we praise you, God. We praise you, for your name is near. People tell of your wonderful deeds. You say, I choose the appointed time. It is I who judge with Meshar, equity. Psalm 96, which is a companion psalm to Psalm 98, says this, say among the nations, the Lord reigns. The world is firmly established. It cannot be moved. He will judge the peoples with Meshar. It goes on to sound exactly like Psalm 98, verse 11. It says, let the heavens rejoice, let the earth be glad, let the sea resound and all that is in it. Let the fields be jubilant and everything in them. Let all the trees in the forest sing for joy. Let all creation rejoice before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in faithfulness. This is the hope of Meshar. This is what equity means. Equity is exclusively God's prerogative. That's why as the psalmist is in awe of the beauty of creation, he worships the creator, not the creation. He worships the designer, not the design. He worships the one who is capable of Meshar. In verse 9, he says, sing to the Lord, sing before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He will make all things right. He will make all things new. He will make all things whole. It is his prerogative, and he is the only one who has the authority and the ability to do it. And we worship him because of that. I mean, think of it this way. Imagine that you were victimized in the worst possible way. Imagine that someone you love was killed, murdered, in cold blood, a capital crime. Your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter, your husband, your wife, your best friend was murdered in the commission of a capital crime. The best we could hope for, our best form of justice, is that the police would track this person down, and they would find them, and they would investigate and accumulate incontrovertible evidence, and that person would be assigned the absolute best defense that we could provide them. And they would receive an adequate and competent and excellent defense of their innocence. And the information and the evidence would be produced before a jury of their peers and demonstrate beyond any reasonable doubt that they were guilty of this crime. And the jury of their peers decides that they are guilty of capital murder. And the judge pronounces sentence, and they shall lose their life, either by death by execution or by spending the rest of their life in prison. That's the best we can hope for. You never get that person back. That person is never restored to you. The best that we can provide, the best justice, is far short of Meshar, because Meshar means to make whole. Meshar means to make smooth. Meshar means to renew and restore and resurrect. This is the one who created the heavens and the earth. This is the one who we worship when we see the majesty of the creation. This is exactly what Isaac Watts understood. When he was writing a hymnal based on the Psalms, and he came to the 98th Psalm, I believe he was overwhelmed by that concept. How do I know that? I read verse 3. Verse 3 of Joy to the World says, he rules the world. How? With truth and grace. And he makes the nations prove. He makes evidence of his righteousness in the nations. And he makes the nations prove the glory of his righteousness and the wonders of his love. The wonders of his love. The wonders of his love. See, Isaac Watts was reading the 98th Psalm. And when he came to the final stanza in verse 7, and it says, let the sea resound and everything in it. The earth and all of the people in it. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. Let them sing before the Lord, for he comes to make all things right, to make all things new, to repair what was broken, to make things as if they had never failed. He comes to judge the world in righteousness and the people with meshar, with equity. It was April the 3rd, 2005. It was a Sunday, and I was here. And it was my very first Sunday as the senior pastor of Riverbend Church. Can you believe that? You voted for me 18 years ago. April the 3rd, 2005. No. I appreciate that, but it's been a long road here, folks. But it was a good day. It was a good day on April the 3rd, 2005. Diane and I were here, and I found out that my best friend from California, the guy with the 4 sons, was in San Antonio, Texas with his wife. He was there on business, and they were interviewing because he wanted to go to Africa. And so I called him up and I said, hey, I got the job. I want you to come up to Austin. So that evening, my first Sunday at Riverbend, they came up and we walked around the campus. I showed them the buildings, and we were sitting on a bench outside of the porte-cochere in the community center. It was a beautiful spring evening, and Diane and I, and he and his wife sat there, and I looked at him and I said, I need you to come here. And Riverbend needs you. I need you. You understand me. You understand my vision. You understand the passion that I have to connect with people who cannot connect with anyone else. You understand what it is to be a misfit and an outsider and to look at things differently. You understand this place. I believe you know Riverbend and the soul of it because you know what it means to be different on purpose. You understand this. I need you to be here. And he sat there and he said, I can't come. I can't come because God is calling me to Africa. You see, he had found out about a community in South Africa that was caring for single mothers and their children who had AIDS. And he said, I feel called to go there and to document what they're doing and to promote it and to serve those women and those children there in Africa. It was a camp called Monte Cristo. And man, I pushed back. I was like, no. You're mishearing God. God is telling you to come here with me. I need you here. But it's hard when someone you respect tells you, no, this is what God is calling us to do. I said, okay, all right, fine. I'll surrender to God. But let me tell you, when you're done there, you're coming here. I don't care whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there will be a place here for you. I need you here. We need you here. And so we left. It was 8 weeks later, the last Sunday in May of 2005, He and a team were climbing up Monte Cristo Mountain with a camera crew to get shots of this community from above, when a boulder dislodged and rolled over the top of my friend and killed him. I remember getting the call from his wife, and I didn't understand. It made no sense to me. And in the years since then, it's still hard for me to understand, but I understand this one thing, that God's ways are higher than my ways, and God's thoughts are higher than my thoughts, and God is bigger than me. And God knows what God is doing. And I can tell you that 18 years later, 3 of that man's 4 sons live here in Austin. All 7 of his grandchildren come to this church. In fact, his 2 oldest sons are Tylen and Travis Taylor, who work here at Riverbend Church. I still don't understand it. But the way I look at it is that thing that he told me 20 years ago when he got back from the Grand Canyon. As he was standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon after taking his family across the country on their automotive incarceration vacation, he stood on the rim of the Grand Canyon. I said, "What was it like, Ty?" He said, "Well, it's a big ditch made by the finger of God. It's majestic. It's beautiful." And then he said, "But as I was standing there, I realized something." And what he told me, I've never forgotten. He said, "As I stood there and I gazed at the Grand Canyon, I realized it's okay to be small. It's okay to be small." You see, the source code for awe is humility. The source code for awe is I don't understand and I don't have to, because it's okay to be small. And you want to know what? That's the message of Christmas. That is the Christmas message. God made small. How much smaller do you get than an infant in his mother's womb? How much more frail and vulnerable and fragile are you than a newborn in a stable? This is God made small, because he's telling us at Christmas, he's saying it's okay to be small, because I am big and I got this. I am Mishar. I make all things right and all things whole and all things new. I am the God of the resurrection, and it's okay to be small. It's what we're going to celebrate next Sunday. I gave away the message at Christmas Eve. It's okay to be small, but it changed my life, because when I don't understand, I understand that. It's okay to be small, because that is the source code for awe. I can look at the grandeur and I don't have to explain it or understand it. I can just be in awe of it. And that awe is a catalyst for joy. And while there are other catalysts, generosity is a catalyst, and gratitude is a catalyst, and friendship is a catalyst. All of these are good catalysts for joy. I believe the most powerful catalyst for joy is to be in awe. So this Christmas, may you find awesome. And may you find joy. Merry Christmas.